Gettysburg Museum of History Studios.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this promotion for a tour we have coming up on September 27th at 10 a.m. down at Antietam. And it's Sedgwick's division at Antietam, led by author and historian Scott Hartwig. Scott is with us right now. Hello, Scott.
Hey, Matt.
So tell us a little bit about this tour. What can people expect on it?
We'll start at the Visitor Center, and we'll leave our cars there.
Good.
And then we're going to hike up probably the Smoketown Road to the East Woods. And then we'll follow Sedgwick's division, because Sedgwick's division crossed Antietam Creek in the morning, a little bit after 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then marched across country up to the East Woods. They were deployed in 3 lines, 3 brigade lines, and then they advanced through the East Woods, crossed the Hagerstown Pike into the West Woods. So what we'll do is we'll walk up to the East Woods, and then we'll cross over a ground that just a few years ago was purchased by the Battlefield Trust and the Save Historic Antietam Foundation. And it's really, really critical ground that they have.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of fighting. Because one of the things that many of the soldiers in Sedgwick's division mention is that the ground literally, they said, was carpeted with dead and wounded Union and Confederate soldiers. I mean, they couldn't believe how many dead and wounded soldiers there were. Some soldiers said it was difficult for us to actually move in a line because there were so many casualties in front of them. They were stepping over soldiers and so on. And what we'll do is follow 2 soldiers in this advance. So we're not going to zigzag around and try to catch up to where they are. But it's Roland Bowen, who is a private in the 15th Massachusetts Infantry. He was a mill worker before the war, but Massachusetts had a very good education system, different than a lot of states in the United States. And he was a very good writer and a very good, very intelligent, articulate, observant sort of guy. But the other thing about him is that he told it like it was. I mean, he wrote like a modern soldier would write.
Okay.
The way he described things. So he left these great letters about his experiences at Antietam. So we'll talk about Roland Bowen, and then we'll talk about Bowen's a private in the 15th Massachusetts, and then the other person we'll talk about is a lieutenant in the 7th Michigan, Sam Hodgman. And Sam Hodgman's 30 years old when he enlisted in the 7th Michigan. He was enlisted as a first sergeant. So he must have had something going for him. He was also 30 years old. I didn't look him up in the census to see if he had a family or what his occupation was, so I don't know what that was. But Hodgman, he wrote a letter to his parents on the night before the battle, and then he's going to get wounded in the battle, and he's going to write his dad a really long letter about Antietam in November from a hospital. And that letter is also unbelievable. I mean, he also just tells his dad like it is, like this is what's going on. So both of these regiments, the 7th Michigan is kind of on the left end of Sedgwick's division, because Sedgwick's division enters the West Woods, and we'll get into this, when we're on the tour, but they enter the West Woods in these brigade lines not because Sedgwick wanted to go that way, because the Corps commander Sumner did. Okay. So Sumner overrides Sedgwick in the way Sedgwick actually wanted to fight his division, and makes Sedgwick fight his division the way Sumner wants him to do it, which is disastrous for the Corps, because they get hit in the flank and the front. Artillery, infantry, and the Confederate attacks just maul the division. It loses 2,200 men in about 20 minutes. God. It is the Roland Bowen's unit suffers the highest number of losses, I believe, of any Union regiment in the entire battle. I think it was 318 men. They're almost all killed and wounded. There's a few POWs in that. But Hodgman's unit is on the far left flank of the division, not the extreme left flank, which was near the Dunker Church.
Okay.
If you go down to Antietam and you drive into Philadelphia Brigade Park, they call it, as you're driving in there, if you go to your left off the main road in, you're going to walk into where the 7th Michigan is located. And, I mean, it's an unbelievable fight. Well, the brigade commander says it's the heaviest fire that he ever saw that they're exposed to. So the division is routed. So it's to me, it's kind of an interesting experience to walk the ground and then to kind of gain an understanding why is the division routed, but also what are the experiences of these two men? Because their experiences are very interesting, what they go through and how they articulate it and remember it and what they remember about it and what they tell their families about it. And that also includes, particularly for Bowen, the aftermath of the battle when they're burying the dead.
And they don't sugarcoat it.
They do not sugarcoat it at all.
Nice.
At all. It is like, particularly with Bowman, it is like you are reading a modern soldier writing about war. And Hodgman's really, he's pretty blunt about stuff that he encounters, but his view is a little bit different than Bowen's view about the battle and about the war and everything like that. But it just makes for an interesting, I think when you personalize these things, it makes them a lot more interesting than if you're just telling the story of Sedgwick's division, right?
Sure.
We're going to talk about a couple of soldiers in Sedgwick's division and their experiences and what those experiences tell us about the battle.
How big was Sedgwick's division numbers-wise?
It was about 5,500 men. It was one of I consider Sedgwick's division and Richardson's division of the 2nd Corps to be the two best divisions in the Army of the Potomac in the Battle of Antietam. They're both veteran units. They're very experienced. They're also, Sumner is not a great field commander.
Right.
He's actually a pretty poor one. But he is a great maker of soldiers.
Okay.
He can develop soldiers. So the Corps is run very professionally. It's very West Point. And the volunteer soldiers that make up the Corps are really well trained. They're well equipped. They're well led. So it's all the brigade commanders in the Sedgwick's division are West Pointers. Sedgwick's a West Pointer. And it's just kind of now there's a 3rd division that's attached to the 2nd Corps, which is French's division, which is a different story. Because they're put together literally the day before the battle. Okay. Right? But Sedgwick and Richardson's divisions, the commanders are veterans, the units are veterans. They're just really good units. And in Sedgwick's case, they're just sacrificed, And
so 5,500, how many did they lose?
2,200.
2,200. Jesus.
2,200.
So, and it's like that area that you're talking about, it's not a small area, but it's not like the whole battlefield, right? So picturing that many men and they're in line brigade after brigade, right? Is what you're saying? So to picture that many men in there and then just getting swallowed up taking all those casualties, it had to be a mess.
It's a stampede. It is a stampede. There are some units that we would talk about this a little bit on the tour. There are some units that kind of save the bacon of a lot of the men because they're in a position that they could change front and deliver fire at the Confederates, which did slow the Confederates down a little bit. But the one thing about the Confederate attack is, it is really well delivered. First they hit them at a vulnerable point, but the other thing is, they just strike like a sledgehammer. And then once they get the Yankees on the run, they don't stop. They just relentlessly pursue them. And there's no chance to make any sort of a stand. If you are a soldier in Bowen's regiment, there's only one thing you can do, and that is run for your life. Because if you stand and try to fight, you're going to die, or you're going to be taken prisoner.
Right.
So you just run for your life, and that's what most of the men in the division end up doing.
Wow. Well, we're going to get into that a lot more on September 27th. And then after the tour, we're going to head over to the Schindler House in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. It's 10 minutes down the road. That is the home of the George Tyler Moore Center. And the new director of the George Tyler Moore Center is our friend, Dr. Jen Murray. And there she is right there. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Matt.
All right. So first, tell us a little bit about what the George Tyler Moore Center does.
So the George Tyler Moore Center was established in the mid-1990s to study the Civil War. And it's an interesting amalgamation of a Civil War center at a university. And there's actually only a handful of academic institutions in the country that have centers devoted exclusively to studying the Civil War. Gettysburg College is one, and University of Virginia, and the Now Center is another. So this has been around for over 30 years and initially was established really to study the Civil War, for West Virginia specifically, and their role in the conflict. But over the last 15 or so years, it's evolved into much more public programming. And that was really under the previous director, our friend, Dr. Jim Broomall, who has made the George Tyler Moore Center a lot more public facing. And that's certainly a vision that I'll continue, or a management style that I will continue to offer programming on any number of aspects of the American Civil War to the public.
Now, the George Tyler Moore Center is a registered 501c3 or something like that, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, this tour is actually a fundraiser for the George Tyler Moore Center and the nonprofit that is affiliated with us, the Digital History Pioneers Foundation, which is also a registered 501c3, and it's dedicated to supporting the educational video and in-person programs that Addressing Gettysburg does, as well as, equipment upgrades and maybe some operating costs along the way, things like that. And so we're splitting this, the two entities here. And of course, when you get a ticket, that money is what is that? What am I saying? Tax deductible, right? You can write that off on your taxes. So you're doing some good and you're getting some good because you're saving some of your money at the end of the year. Now, afterwards, we're going to go to the Schindler Center, or the Schindler House, like we said, and we're going to have some light refreshment, some good food from a local eatery. And then we're also going to have book signings with Scott and with Jen. Scott's books, of course, To Antietam Creek and I Dread the Thought of the Place, and Jen's book, On a Great Battlefield. You can add those on when you sign up. If you don't have a copy already, you can purchase them, and we'll make sure that we have them there for you ahead of time, and you can get it signed. If you have your own copy, but you don't have it signed by either author, then bring it along with you, and you can get it signed there, and we'll just mingle and talk and, do whatever. So it should be a fun day. I think it'll be a fun day, right? I think so. Mm-hmm. It'll be cool. It'll be very cool, actually, to hear this, especially because the accounts that you're going off of don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key when you learn about this stuff is enough with the flag waving and the glory. Mm. Let's get down to what's so ugly about it. And perhaps maybe we can all cool our heads a bit and not have another one of these someday, right? Yep. That would be nice. Now, here's the thing. We need a 25-person minimum for this tour to go off. So the ticket sales close on August 31st at 11:59 p.m. And at that point, if we have the 25, the tour is going. If we don't have the 25, we're going to try it again next year. So this is a new thing for us. So we're gonna see how it goes. We certainly want you to come. If you can come, that would be great. We'd love to see you there. We certainly need your help and support, and we appreciate it.
I would just make a quick comment about the Schindler House. Maybe some of your listeners have been down to Shepherdstown before, but the opportunity to come into the Schindler House is really special. Yeah. It was built in 1795, owned by Conrad Schindler, and it was used as a hospital during the Maryland campaign. So there are wounded Confederate soldiers who will be cared for in the wake of the Antietam battle. So we'll have an opportunity to come in the house and maybe talk a little bit about the legacy and the aftermath of Antietam while we're in that space after Scott's tour. That
would be really cool to do. And there's a blood stain, not to get sensational, but there's a blood stain on the floor, right?
There is.
And is that visible?
It's under carpet, but...
Carpet or rug?
Rug, sorry.
So like
it's
we can pull it up.
Mm-hmm. It's under a rug.
So might we get a chance to see that?
We might get a chance to see that.
Now there's another interesting story though attached to that house. The George Tyler Moore Center, people probably recognize Tyler Moore.
That's right.
Tell us the story there. What's that? Mary Tyler Moore is the connection.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So Mary Tyler Moore purchased this house in the early 1990s for essentially her father to live there, George Tyler Moore. Yeah, he was really sort of the family historian and had a great passion and interest in the Civil War. Unfortunately, his health never allowed him to live there, so she ended up donating the building to Shepherd University for the creation of this center. She's related, great-great-great-grandfather is Conrad Schindler, the guy who built the house in the 1790s.
That's what's so cool about it.
Right. So it has that connection. And of course, she plays Mary Todd Lincoln and is it North or South?
Oh, that's
she's
right.
in?
I forgot about that. Yeah. Right.
And she has Civil War connections herself. So it has an interesting sort of lineage to it. So
and didn't you say that you're either about to receive or have just received was it original paintings to the house?
Yeah, Conrad Schindler commissioned some paintings of himself and his wife, Elizabeth, and his kids sometime in the early 1800s. And the exact narrative of the paintings is a little bit murky, but Mary Tyler Moore purchased the house, and when she purchased it in the mid-1990s, maybe took the paintings of her ancestors with her to her estate in New York City. Long story short is the paintings of Conrad and Elizabeth Schindler were just donated back to the George Tyler Moore Center. So we have these paintings that were done in the early 1800s of the people whose house our Civil War Center is in. Just we got them in the mail about 2 weeks ago from Mary Tyler Moore's husband's estate that is starting to be deaccessioned. So it's a really cool story of these paintings, kind of like the Schindlers coming home. They're gigantic. They're in wonderful condition. We're going to do an event later on with them. But for the folks coming to our event in September, you get to come and take a look at those paintings in this historic house after a great tour with Scott, one of the leading historians of the Battle of Antietam. So it's just a wonderful opportunity to support good history and good causes.
Yeah, and it just goes to show how important history is. I mean, that these paintings, first of all, that Mary Tyler Moore bought her great whatever grandfather's home for her father, but that didn't work out. So she said, well, this can't turn into apartments or something. So I'm going to do something with it. And she does. She gives it to the college. George Tyler Moore Center is created. And now those paintings are coming back. I don't know. I just think it's very cool. It's such a cool story.
It is a very cool story.
It's not like, this story started in the 1960s and it's like, okay, that's not that big of a deal that it came. This is 200 years ago, more than 200 years ago. So that's really cool. I love that. All right. Well, folks, link is in the description. We appreciate your help. We'd love to see you. This is going to be a lot of fun. So come on out, join us, and we'll see you on September 27th on the field. Thank you.